Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here for another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. Boy, Steve, we really went in deep with a client on competitive advantage this week and last week, and I really decided we really haven't had that conversation here. So, why don't we talk about competitive advantage this week?
Certainly my head is in that space, given all the conversations I've had, and just recently had a long discussion with the team and realized that they knew their product really, really well, and they really didn't know very much about the competitor.
And so there's some interesting thoughts about competitive advantage. So we figured we'd put it in the community and do this conversation. What a great panel we have today. Marco Tillmann, Brian Weber, Cory Bryan, and Joy McCaffrey. And what we are going to talk about, as I've already said, we're going to talk about competitive advantage. On Monday, I put this question in the community. What are the most important things to think about with regards to competitive advantage? He's not on the call this week, but our friend Jason Vincelent was back where he's supposed to be in the first answer. And he said, understand that the product managers of your competitors may understand their markets quite differently. Do not be intimidated by their features or capabilities, as those may not be the best for your specific market. Solve the problems for your markets first and foremost. And I thought that was a really nice way to start it out, right? Too often we become chameleons. We just try to mimic what we see our competitors doing, and that's not a way to get competitive advantage. We also had Brian Weber come in pretty quickly. Understand your customers' markets better than your competitors do. Solve your customer markets problems. Don't worry about your competitors. So, do you not believe in competitive advantage? Are you just of a single mindset that it's...
I think I'd probably be more competitive awareness. You're aware of them. You kind of know what's going on, but you're not trying to follow them feature for feature, or, oh, they put this new feature in. Let's go put that in our version of it. It's listen to your customers, and you'll know what you need to do. And just be aware of your competitors, and if they're making many big, huge jumps, price jumps or anything like that. But as far as what the product does, I'm not a huge believer in competitor analysis.
All right. So keep that market focus, talk to your customers, understand their needs, and maybe I'm adding a little license, but be unique in how you solve those problems, and you're not going to have to worry about the competitors.
Yep.
Which to me is competitive advantage, right? It's a great way to do it with that approach. Cory, what do you think about that? You gave him the thumbs up or the celebration or
I
whatever.
did, yeah, and I had a similar type of responses. I would much rather make our product the best one it can be to give ourselves a competitive advantage. I'd want to understand what the competition is generally doing, but yeah, I agree completely with Brian. I don't want to get into a feature war. I don't want to get into a pricing war. I don't want to get into a market war. I want our products to be the best they can for the customers that we're solving problems for, and they will reward us with that, and that should be our competitive advantage.
All right. I think we're getting some alignment on that. Marco, you've given the thumbs up on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the mistake most fall into is the Me Too effect, right? You want to mimic what the competition is doing because you think they're being successful with it, when in fact you could also be mimicking their mistakes. So I've seen this very often, that competition is being just basically mirrored along with all the fallbacks and all the issues that they're having, and then in the end, it's no longer a blue ocean. It's completely saturated and everybody's doing the same thing, and there's no unique value proposition. Besides, at the end of the day, we're still trying to solve the customer's issues, right? We're not trying to solve the issue of just keeping leadership happy because we have the same feature that the competition does.
Yeah. No, I love that. Joy, what's your take on this question? What are the most important things to think about with regards to competitive advantage?
So one thing I've been focused on is I'm doing loss calls.
Okay.
And so, one of the things that we get out of the lost call is why did you, who did you go with and why? And we do a monthly analysis of all of those reasons. And it's not so much, we don't want to go feature by feature. But because I do have an accounting software, it's interesting. What we found is our competitors will say, you have to have this, you have to do this, you have to have this feature. So we try and get at why is our competition saying this? How are they saying this? How are they getting them to believe that they need our competitor because they do this and we don't? And how can we counteract that? How can we educate the customers? How can we maybe change our messaging? So that's what we've gotten out of competitive analysis.
Yeah, so doing competitive advantage type stuff, understanding why they are what they're doing and positioning. When I was a director of competitive intelligence a long time ago, we actually had we did that exactly. We had a bi-weekly call, and back then bi-weekly meant every other week, and that's for you, Steve. And we called it quick market intelligence. It was for us to understand what are the landmines our competitors are laying for us and how do we overcome them. But I still like the idea of getting back to where Brian and Cory were, was like, we also need to make sure we're defining things uniquely and solving problems uniquely so that, you know, it's hard. Do you do those same call with the wins to find the same stuff out?
I would like to, and I've been pushing for that. Initially, there was sales pushback. They didn't want us talking right away. I know, I see that.
To a win? Normally, it's the opposite. They don't want you talking to the loss.
Yeah. So initially, they wanted us to wait because, you know, we're onboarding.
Yeah.
There's all that. And I said, you know, obviously, we don't want to wait because I want to understand not the product, but the sales process, the competition, you know, et cetera. Right. How did we win? Why did we win? And we're just working through logistics and it's taking longer. But so I want to, but the short answer is no.
Okay. Interesting. Cory, you have something to say.
So there was a second part to that, and it was kind of what Paul Hayata had mentioned, which is what is your competitive advantage, and focus on that, focus on making that improving instead of bringing up a lagging thing that, you know, Marco said probably isn't going to be the thing that differentiates you. The thing that I would focus on is how can we respond quicker than anybody else to the problems that our customers have, and that should be our true competitive advantage, because I like that approach better.
Agility is the competitive advantage. And
hey,
we're going to talk about that.
What about that?
Yeah. Well, you notice I didn't say that other word.
I did, yes.
Related to it. No, Paul said for our current project, I'm taking a simple two-step approach. Define market problems differently. Solve them in a way our competitors cannot or will not. And, you know, I think this is, Steve, if we go back to some of the work we were doing, there's a yin and yang about competitive advantage and segmentation that just I can't get out of my head.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And when you try to compete with everybody in every market, you're always going to be lesser. You know, if you're competing with, you know, Google, who was it? I talked to somebody years ago who said, you know, our competitors are IBM and like ABC Co, you know, this tiny little 2-person startup and I don't know where. And it was because their focus was on people who need what we have built with no real, you know, market focus. So yeah, it's become clear to me that competitive strategy is absolutely market and persona focused. Otherwise, you're competing with everybody.
And we've had clients when we've said that, they're like, wait, so I have to do like 10 of these? I'm like, if you want to do it well, right? You need to have, you know, understand in each of these segments you're going after or personas you're going after, how do you compare to the competition? Understand what your advantage is. And your advantage may be different in one market than it is in another one, right? Depending on who the competitor is.
True. And, you know, let me also say that I used to work for a president who really was violently opposed to competitive intel. And I love the spirit of it, though. He would say, I want us to be customer obsessed, not competitor obsessed. And the reality is, you know, the salespeople were still hounding the product managers for give me a battle card for, you know, company X. So we took all of our competitive stuff home and did it there so he wouldn't know about it. But I think one of the important things I would call out about competitive advantage is we tend to focus on weakness. We look at our competitor's product and say, what is their weakness? And then we arm the sales team with that. And yet competitors will fix their weakness. So I'm channeling the book by, I want to say it was Jack Trout in Differentiate or Die, who said, find the weakness in their strength and you can destroy them.
Yeah.
Because they won't change their strength. What is the one thing they will not change? It's a strength, right? And that's, I think, a really tricky, maybe more strategic sort of approach to competitive advantage rather than just, building some tactical battle cards.
No, I completely get that. And I was trying to pull it up while you were talking. George Day in Market Driven Organization, if you looked at the research he did, there were two dimensions. One was sort of market, focus. One was like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like he looked at competitors as part of the market. I thought that was an interesting.
Well, the real definition of market does include competitors. Almost always when we talk about market focus, we mean segment focus.
Yeah.
A market is all the buyers and all the competitors.
Yep. I completely agree with
Cory
that.
has been patiently waiting.
I was just seeing how long I could get him to wait.
It's making me a little nervous, actually.
Well, it helped me refine my question as I was waiting. But I'm curious, is what was the reason why they were so concerned about this competitive advantage? Is it because it was the most important thing for them? Or is it a part of their strategy? Why were they concerned about it? My gut feeling is, if this is what you're focusing on, is how can we be better than our clients, or how can we be equal to our clients, you're probably focusing on the wrong thing. If it's a part of your strategy, then sure, all for it. Let's learn more. But I get really fidgety when I think that this is the only thing that matters to somebody, is being more competitive, having a better competitive advantage than others.
I don't think.
I would agree with that.
Normally when I talk about competitive advantage, I do it as part of strategic positioning, where it is one leg of a three-legged stool with ideal target customer and strategic value. What's the value? So what's the value you create? Problem you solve, value that comes from that. Who are you solving that for? And how are you different from the competition? And that's sort of the framework I put on it. May Wong had a great answer, which really made me think. She said, your competitive advantage is what gets you your sale today, but it's subject to a lot of change. Your customers need change. Your competitors grow and adapt. New non-traditional competitors appear. There are new market trends that make your competitive advantage irrelevant. And I think about this concept that it's true. The market is always moving, and the product and technology is changing, and people are coming in. You can't be static with it. Brian, I'd love to get your take on, competitive advantage as a static thing that if we don't evolve with it, won't allow us to keep it.
No, I think it always, like May said, it changes. We're too fluid in our lives. Everything is. That if you try to say, this is our competitive advantage, and try to have that same advantage next year, it's not going to work. You should be adapting it all the time.
I guess unless you've got a patent or a trademark that protects it for how many years does it get protected for? 20 years, 17 years? I can't remember.
20, I think.
20, what it is. I mean, and, otherwise it's tough, right? And you need to build it. Or you make your competitive advantage the agility in your organization, or your ability to react to problems, as Cory said earlier. Brian Cohen said, think about the entire customer journey with your product, from thinking about buying something, sort of those triggers, to using it and disposing of it. There are many opportunities to create advantage in that experience. Joy, just because you talked about the loss and sort of the sales process, I'd love to get your take on sort of the customer experience through the whole life cycle of the customer journey as competitive advantage.
So I was spacing a little bit. So
thank you for being honest.
So customer journey is part of a competitive advantage?
So what Brian Cohen was saying is, think about the entire customer journey, from when they start thinking about it to when they make the decision to buy it to when they stop using it, and find places along that whole journey to help create your advantage.
Yeah, we're actually in the process of doing that. We have a lot of acronyms, and again, I've mentioned before, we're in a accounting solution. So we've got a lot of accountants as part of the customer journey. So we have customer support that supports the software, and then we have accounting support that helps our customers answer accounting questions. So we are absolutely in the process of identifying, where our customers stumble, where our customers have questions, what our customers' perceptions are, what their expectations are. And I think that a lot of times I've worked at other companies where the process is our competitive advantage because of superior customer service, superior onboarding, superior support. And I think sometimes, we said we don't want to do feature by feature, but a lot of the times that's just all there is. Depending on the product that you're using, you provide this solution. And the biggest advantage is how you work with your customers, how you respond to customers, how you talk to your customers. And so absolutely, that's a huge part of it.
We've talked before, actually, when we did our what is a product conversation a while back, we said product is a solution to persona's problem. And then we went into including all components necessary, sort of this whole product concept. And what you just said, Joy, really made me think about that, understanding the whole product itself and coming together with the whole product based on what the needs of the market are. So it goes back to sort of Brian's original thought about making sure you understand that. Just understanding the whole product, including that journey, I think is so critical for competitive advantage.
And a lot of the key features and competitive advantage comes from the company capabilities. Yeah. And yet mostly when we're talking about, battle sheets or competitive intel, we're looking at, they have a feature we don't have, we have a feature they don't have. But I had a commodity type product, but we had stellar customer support. And that was the reason why people kept coming back to us. They could buy from anybody. We were all basically presenting the same information, but our competitor had outsourced their support and tried to remove those costs. And our customers loved the fact that they could get an answer in 5 minutes, not 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this just the other week with one of our clients, Steve, where I came from a content space where I inherited a product that had gone from 35 million a year to 3 million a year. And I was taking over it. And over about 5 years that happened. And what had happened was this was parts information. And we had a whole team of taxonomists who were creating taxonomies of, if it's a ball bearing, it's this type of thing, and here's how you find it. And it was being used by engineers to find parts, components to put into stuff. And a guy took over as the president of the division and said, oh, we're paying all this money for these taxonomists when everybody just uses free text search now. Let's get rid of the taxonomists and everybody can just free text search. And he saved maybe $1 million a year in salaries, but his product then went from 35 million a year to 3 million a year because the true competitive advantage they had was the taxonomists and the taxonomy were making it easy for people to find what they were looking for, where free text search couldn't. And I think to your point, understanding that your customer support was the competitive advantage, because I'm sure there's CEOs who are going to come in and say, oh, that's too bloated, let's get rid of it, right? I don't know. Yeah,
the only re-engineering project I ever did was how much can we cut customer support? And it was a fascinating exercise. I mean, we brought together a cross-functional team of sales and support and product and marketing and everybody else. And but the CFO had instituted the plan is like, how much can we cut customer support without impacting Net Promoter Score? And the answer was we need to increase customer support by 15%.
But it's so critical to understand all these touch points and what advantage they give us. And whether it's customer support, a taxonomist, or something else. That's why competitive advantage can be so hard, because sometimes it's counterintuitive. To your point, hiring more people actually was the right answer, not getting rid of them.
Right.
Any last thoughts on the important things to think about that we haven't talked about, Marco?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing that I think is really the real competitive advantage is finding that solution. So it's the problem in the solution discovery. Just building features that don't really serve anything and don't solve a problem is useless, right? You can mimic those, but it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think you also have to differentiate between the initial rollout, launch, go to market, and of course, maintaining that competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So a product can be a one-trick pony, and it's a one-hit wonder, everybody loves it, and then all of a sudden you lose touch of the customer and you lose the competitive advantage you had the entire time, not because somebody else has the same features, but because they execute better and they understand the customer better.
Well, what an interesting thing to think. You made me think that as we go through our life cycle, our competitive advantage may change in different phases of life cycle, right? If we have a competitive advantage that can help us find product market fit and become the leader of the market, as we shift to late stage growth and maturity, our competitive advantage may be the fact that we're the leader of the market, right? And it's understanding where it may be. Boy, that would maybe that's an interesting. I need to noodle on that.
Maybe to add something to that, just look at the iPhone, right? The responsiveness and the fact that this huge screen was a huge delight to customers and a huge competitive advantage. Nowadays, everybody has it, right? It's no longer a competitive advantage for the iPhone.
Yeah,
so find something else.
Well, the brand became it because everybody wanted it. Then the ecosystem became, and then being able to be blue in your group chats, right, is a competitive advantage for some. I don't know if I've talked about the research before. There's research showing that teenagers in high school will drop the friends who are making their iMessages chat turn green. And so kids were wanting iPads and iPhones, even if they were old ones, so they wouldn't get kicked out of chats. I mean, but
I read somewhere that Google was going to change their green balloons to be blue because
just for that. I mean, but it's to your point. As we go through, as things change, there's going to be different things that might become an understanding that as we go through it. Cory, you said in the chat you would argue that you could reduce your offerings, features, and have more competitive advantage than before, which I would agree. If you understand what those core things are, you could even double down on them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the focus area that a lot of people don't want to do. They want to spread wide and thin instead of go deep and focused on one particular thing or one particular problem. But yeah, getting rid of all that noise and all that fluff and everything else would improve your products probably a lot.
I remember hearing a story about a company that made materials for aerospace and that type of stuff, but they found this plastic that didn't break or crack, and they were selling it as a button, and they weren't doing well at all. And they brought a new general manager into the business, and she went out and talked to the customers on the problem. Doubled the price, and took off because they had buttons that wouldn't crack, and they were just selling them just as a commodity. And she's like, no, we're going to make them into a premium thing because everybody hates it when the buttons on their shirt crack, or the guys hate it when the buttons on their shirt crack. And just by figuring that thing out, the competitive advantage went through the roof for them. So, all right. Any last thoughts before we go to the poll?
Yeah, I haven't. I've been on the call now for 30 minutes and I haven't said anything tacky about salespeople. And, as I listen to you all talk about how important it is to, reduce your features as opposed to every conversation I've ever had with a salesperson, which is we need this feature, we need this feature, we need this feature. The more I'm coming to this conclusion again, that market segmentation is the key. If they're talking to the wrong kind of customer, then the customer is saying, well, I need this feature that our customers don't need because we're focused on this other market segment over here. And maybe it's good insight, right? If you hear it often enough, then you go, cool. There's a new market segment here that we want to go after. But as I'm just reflecting on this whole conversation, it does seem to me that every bit of feedback I've had from sales has been, we need more features, not fewer. And we need everything the competitor has. And I wonder how much that is they're not focused on the same market that I'm focused on.
Actually, I think that's a great pivot to the poll. The poll question this week was, what is the best way to create competitive advantage? The options were better user experience, which we've talked a little bit about already today, better segmentation, which Steve just sort of went into, a consistent market focus, which we've already talked about today, better sales enablement, and other it depends, sharing comments, I'll always are forth. And Steve, you and I both voted for better segmentation, and I didn't vote until after some of the workshops we did this week. And after doing these workshops, it more and more and more and more, like, this is it for me. It is that segmentation. Because if you don't have the segmentation, you don't know what the user experience needs to be. You don't know what the other things are until you really get to that. I could argue the winning one was a consistent market focus at 33%. And I could argue that you need a consistent market focus to better segment, right? But I
took it the other way, that if I had better segmentation, I could have a consistent market focus.
And then by doing that, we deliver better user experience and better sales enablement. So Steve and I were both in better segmentation. It was tied for second at 20%. Joy, did you vote?
I did, and I said other, and
Okay.
I did add comments, and I said it's difficult to identify
one best way.
Because it really depends on your product. It depends on the market. It depends on the segmentation. You have to be flexible, and but I also pointed out you really need, excellent salespeople who know how to sell, and not just lower their price and ask for things. You need kick-ass support.
Yep.
But you need all of those things, really.
It takes a village.
It does.
I get it. I like that. And I do see your comment. Marco, did you vote?
Yeah, I voted late.
All of the above, you said, right?
Exactly.
You and Joy are my all of the above people. I try to get you to understand there is no all of the above. This is a best.
I
make a decision.
No, I couldn't.
If you could only do one of these.
Well, here's the thing. I've seen products fail so often because one of them was missing, and I could never say if that one misses every time, the other ones are okay. It's always the missing link. Like if one of them is not done well, the product is not successful, or at least, well, maybe there's levels of success, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even better sales, which received very few votes, I think better sales enablement, I think is super, super crucial. Because if the sales folks are not capable of even explaining the product to customers, how can they sell, right? And then in that case, the product managers are being pulled into every single call.
Yeah, actually, the person who always votes for sales or has the sales opinion is my friend John Krog, who was an account manager before he moved into product management, solution management for a while. And so, it's good to have that view. And, he actually said, picked better sales enablement since they need to present the product's value prop and USP. If the sales teams aren't able to articulate the value and map to the client's requirements, the best products will struggle in the market. And this is where I wanted to get into it. He then added, better execution beats better ideas. Better execution is a competitive advantage because it's hard to do consistently. Cory, you gave him 100 for that, right? Talk to me about that before we get to your answer.
Yeah, I mean, ideas are great, but they're worthless without being able to build and deliver those things. The best ideas, a lot of the best ideas never see the light of day because they can't get them into a customer's hands and try them out, or because they haven't the right team that knows how to build this or whatever else. So a simple idea delivered will be a very complex idea that never gets out of the building.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, one reason I pivoted to John, Cory put in the chat that I need to stop putting a other as an option, or maybe use I hate all these. John Krog said, the person who picked sales, commented his son's prepping for his SATs and he thinks I need to offer an A and B or B and C choice, for those things. Unfortunately, I'm limited by how many polls I can put in there. Cory, you went with better user experience as your vote, which sort of was tied in second place with better segmentation, each with 20%. Actually, it depends was tied, but I guess that's all of the above for Marco and Joy. Talk to me about user experience.
I think what Marco and Steve said earlier when we were talking about the initial question is so true, and where I would look for that, which is if your customers have a good experience, if your customers have a good time, if they like being able to get an answer in 5 minutes instead of 5 hours, that's a good experience for them. And that means so much more than the 20 people you have doing sales calls is the 200 people that are talking at conferences saying, you got to try this product, it's great. Yeah. Or don't try this product. I mean, how often do we hear about Jira? Right? How many people complain about Jira? And it's not that Jira doesn't have a good experience. It's everything around Jira. Jira does a fine job, and there's lots of, I'm not picking on Jira. I am picking on Jira. There's lots of tools that do specific things, but the experience around them sucks. And you don't want to use those, or you tell people not to use those. So if you make that experience better, if you reduce the friction, if you make it more enjoyable for them, or reduce the time it takes for them to see value in your product, they will have a much better time, and they will talk about that.
I like that. I see it. And I think to Steve's point earlier, I think you have to have really good segmentation of personas to make that work. It's chicken and egg maybe with that. Brian, I saved you for last because I believe you were the one person that voted for the one that won the poll, a consistent market focus with 33%.
I did.
So
yes.
Defend that after all this conversation we just had about segmentation and user experience and all the above.
Yeah, I think that the consistent focus on your market is where you understand what do your customers need. Do they need that nice UI experience, or what is their experience, or is it the customer support? The place where I go get my cars repaired, they just went from a DOS system to a fancy UI system. They had to write my credit card number down on a Post-it note because they couldn't process my payment one time because the system was overloaded. So knowing what your customers want and what they really need will drive you to, do you need a better product? Do you need better customer support? Do you need whatever as part of that journey?
I could easily see the consistent market focus, better segmentation, better user experience being this, chicken and egg type, where do you start, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really, I'm with all of the above people. It's like, if we have a market focus, we'll get better segmentation, we'll create a better user experience, and we'll have better sales enablement tools, and everybody wins.
But then then everybody will vote for all of the above, and these conversations won't be as fun. All right. First question, and I think I know this answer already. Rita McGrath had a book called End of Competitive Advantage, and she argues that in business now business is evolving too rapidly for anything to be sustainable. The real secret to success may be knowing when it's time to quit or adapt. And so the question is sustainable competitive advantage dead? Can you find sustainable competitive advantage, or, as we talked about earlier, it's going to change and evolve through things? So here's the question. This is one of my, we didn't get the looks like we got the other week, but it's, is sustainable competitive advantage dead? And I guess it starts with what's sustainable.
Yeah, I'd probably add a word. Is static sustainable competitive advantage dead? I would say yes.
Okay.
If it's not willing to adapt to your market, it's not going to last.
Okay, so I would agree with that. A competitive advantage which is static or defined and not evolving, that'll work for a period of time and then it's gone. All right, I can agree with that. Cory.
So I'm thinking about this is not an answer, but I'm thinking about the Amazon memo where it's a day one company versus a day two company, where you're always trying to reinvent yourself. You're always trying to do something else. We see lots of The best technology companies do, or the best product companies or the best companies actually do that continually. They're always in that mode. They never sit and say, okay, now we have to sustain what we have. We see lots of companies that do try to sustain what they have, and they last for about 5 to 10 years, and then they go out of business or get bought because they aren't trying to be competitive. They're just trying to rest on what got them there. So I would much rather be in that first bucket than the second.
Yeah. So I've heard the story recently told as Andy Grove, but it was actually a Drucker thing, where it's like, if we look at our business today, if we were brought in as a new CEO, would we keep doing what we're doing? And if the answer is no, then we should shift, right? And that's a story with Intel, with being beat by the Japanese people in memory and stuff, and shifting into the where they did. But I think that's part of it, right? If we were starting afresh, would this still be our competitive advantage? But is having the agility, there's that word again, to be able to evolve it, is that a sustainable competitive advantage then?
Should be, my opinion.
All right. Joy, what's your take on this? Is sustainable competitive advantage dead?
Well, I guess I read it as sustaining a competitive advantage is being agile, having agility, and being flexible. You don't want to be static. So a static competitive advantage is dead. Yes.
Okay. And that's, I was like, I'm going to go to Joy with this question, and I'm going to get one of Joy's famous one-word answers. Yes.
I had to verify how I was interpreting it.
Give it the context on that. I appreciate that. Steve, what's your take?
I don't think this is a new idea. I think that all the things that have been said here are true. If you go back 50 years, those companies that rested on their laurels don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you say, we have finished the product, we have finished our definition of our business, and you don't adapt as the market adapts, then yeah, that's going to die. So I guess it comes back to, are you talking about being static? And yet I do know of companies that say, we've been doing it this way for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and it worked just fine. So yeah, I think those are the ones that are slowly having their market share chipped away by people who are more agile, perhaps. But I think there's also an implication in that sentence that sustainability is feature-based.
Okay.
Because sure, any feature you can come up with, somebody can copy in some period of time. But sustainable advantage comes from your business model, not from your feature set.
So you can have sustainable advantage if you, based on your business model, and I'm going back to Aspire in my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is authority sustainable? Or can that wane?
I think a better question is, can it
evolve?
It must be continually sustained.
Consistent.
When you stop and say, like authority is your reputation,
Yep.
If you're resting on a reputation from 10 years ago, we are the thought leaders in the space, and you can tell when you look at their blog posts that they're all dated 10 years ago. Yeah. Then gosh, it seems like you're not sustaining that advantage. You're just resting on it. So it's back to what everyone else said. If you go static in a changing market, you will die.
Even in systems, which is where with these agility of market focus and turning ideas into stuff and user experience, even in systems, if you go static there, you won't even sustain it.
Right.
Okay. Marco.
So I'm 100% with Steve and Brian on this one. You have to be active about it. You can't be passive and expect sustainability to sustain itself, right? You need to be agile about it and adapt and evolve. And back to the point of this week's topic, right? It's again, it's to some degree all of the above, because that it's a competitive advantage could be any one of these. Mm-hmm. Or all of the above, once again. And that can shift too. So the product itself, feature or not, could be the same and could be enjoyed by customers the same way. But if, for example, all of a sudden your customer support or your experience or your salespeople and so forth fail, that advantage is lost once again. So it is you're adjusting on like 15 different knobs at the same time in order to sustain sustainability.
Okay. I keep getting back to, and maybe I need to go read the book. I think our conversations takes me to this place where competitive advantage is sustainable if you understand that the static, I don't know, the agility and being able to continually change. Steve, help me out here. You know what I'm trying to say?
Not really, except I'm sure there's a Drucker quote in here somewhere. It seems to me that
probably is.
Drucker may have been the one who said every business needs to prepare for no, I lost it. Every business needs to prepare for the abandonment of their business model. In a changing market, companies have to change, or they're dead. I think that's really the way we're interpreting this author's work is staticness versus continued refinement of.
Yeah. Okay, I could see that. Cory put in the chat, sustainability. Is that redundant?
I like that term. It's
or sustain.
Marco said it. I did. I just laughed at it.
Okay. All right. This has been an interesting question. Just to think about this in my head. Maybe it's too big for my head right now. Let's go to the next question.
But I do want to share with you a Drucker quote, because I know you're the Drucker fellow.
We haven't heard a Roger Martin quote today either. So
indeed. But Drucker said the first policy and the foundation for all others is to abandon yesterday.
And so if you can do that, that can be a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Roger Martin gets pretty, the heart of strategy he calls, and it goes back to this conversation we've had all day, is where to play and how to win. How to win is sort of where's your competitive advantage. Where to play is sort of segmentation, and they sort of feed each other. So in his view, competitive advantage and segmentation are intertwined, and you can't separate them. And I think that's why Steve and I both answered the question the way we did in the poll with segmentation, because it's done. Yeah, our Roger Martin and Drucker quote thresholds have been hit for this week. We can move on. Our next question is: do you have a good understanding of your competitive advantage right now? Do you feel like you're in a good place for it? I'm going to go to you, Brian.
I would say 75%. Understand it. We're in a market right now where we're still trying to figure out that competitive advantage. Right now, we're a hands-on kind of service. So we have technology that supports the people that provide that service, but we're looking to see how we can digitize it and give it directly to the customer. And that we're still working out if that's a competitive advantage, or if we need to stick with the more human touch.
All right. I can get that. Joy, how about you? Do you have a good understanding? You've been doing all these loss calls, which means you might be understanding your competitor's competitive advantage. Do you have a good understanding of your competitive advantage, or what you think it is?
Yes.
There it is.
One answer. There it is.
One word answer. Do you think the organization understands it?
Yes, we do have. So my company is about 10 or 11 years old, and the founder identified an excellent product market fit, and we were the first to market with this solution. And he's hired some great people since then to work with him, and I think that we're doing very well. Our NPS score is good. Our ratings are good, and I just think we're doing a really good job. It's the first time I've worked at a company that I feel that way.
I'm going to pivot on this question a little. I'm going to actually throw this to Cory. Is a good understanding of your competitive advantage a key driver for successful growth?
Good understanding of your competitive advantage, a key
driver for growth?
No.
Why?
Because again, I think the focus is on, again, where's the focus? Is the focus on the customers that you're solving the problems for, or is the focus on the other competitors in the market that you're trying to compare to or trying to compete against?
So I guess the key word there is the competitive. If I just said, if you understand your unique advantage or your differentiation, would that be a?
That would be yes.
Okay.
I think
so maybe it's the use of the term. When I think competitive advantage in my head, I use it synonymously with differentiation, right? What is the advantage you have? And maybe it's a word thing. Steve, where's your head on this?
Well, I don't like it when you change the question midstream, because I'm practicing, the original answer.
We'll get back to your original answer if you can remember it.
I feel like our competitive advantage, competitive advantage has to be grounded in things that matter to the customer. Okay. That your competitive advantage, your differentiation, and your value prop are all kind of the same thing. Hey, customer, we do things in a special way, in a way that both you care about and our competitor doesn't. Mm-hmm. So to me, they're inextricably linked together. So I would strike the word competitive. I would say, we have an approach as a business that is unique because we're in tune with the market, and we know where the market is saying we're not getting our needs met. These are, we have these unmet or undermet needs from the competitive landscape, which inspires product decisions.
With that, it makes me wonder if using, you hear Jack Trout differentiate or die, and differentiation is talked about a lot. I almost am thinking that maybe advantage is a better term than differentiation, because it's almost more active.
I agree.
There was a phrase, I forgot who said it, but what's our unfair advantage? I like that phrasing a little bit better.
I do remember hearing somebody talk about unfair advantage, and I don't remember who that was.
Maybe it was April Dunford.
Could be.
It may have been April. It could have been obviously awesome. Marco, whatever version of this question, whether the straight one
or pick your own.
Do you have
right?
Is it, should it be competitive advantage or differentiation or just advantage, or is it, if you have it, it will help you grow? What, your choice, potluck.
It's a tough one. Well, first of all, I'm in between jobs right now, so it's a question to answer from a company point of view. But I think with my previous company, I did have a pretty good understanding of, I wouldn't call it necessarily the competitive advantage, but again, the uniqueness of the offer, like what made it not just different, but what made it unique to the market. Whether that turned out to be an advantage is actually something that depends highly on the leadership team, what they make of it, because the technology was great, but how the go-to-market approach was executed could have been better. Let's put it that way. So from that point of view, I would say, yeah, it's important. It's important to understand it. We did bring out a SaaS product, where I also did the competitive analysis to some degree, but I was really trying to find what makes us different and what do we have that nobody else has. And is this really what the market needs?
And can we find the market segment or personas who value that?
Yeah, but to be honest, it was the wrong approach to some degree, because we should have led with that instead of doing it afterwards just to validate what we're doing. Which, classic mistake, actually. But there was just one of these things that just had to get done really, really quickly. But yeah, from the get-go, you need to find your market fit and see if it makes sense before you dig deeper.
All right. I love the conversation. Now it's time for us to go to our lightning round. And our lightning round question is, why is competitive advantage so important? Word, phrase. Brian, why is competitive advantage so important?
You want to stay in business.
So you can stay in business. I love that. Marco.
I would say perception of the market.
I love it. We talk about perception actually when we talk about this stuff, so that's perfect. Joy.
Longevity, which is what Brian said, but in
You're just finding a way to make it your own.
Mhm.
I got it. Cory.
I don't have a good answer.
Pass.
I don't have a good answer.
Do you not think it's important?
I don't think obsessing over it is. I think like I said, understanding why customers use your product and why that's important to them, I think is better.
If you do that, what does that get you? Why is that important?
I mean, I like Brian and Joy's answer of, you get
You
to stay in business. You get to keep playing the game. How's that?
Keep playing the game.
I would have thought you just fall back on agility.
I would.
It's just.
I would like it
nice
known. I would like it
answer.
noted for the record that I did not bring up that word at all in this conversation.
Okay. All right.
I did many times. Not the other word that sounds like it starts like it.
Yes.
But the agility word, I like that. Steve, is that your answer?
Sales confidence.
Sales confidence.
I know I have a reputation for being mean to salespeople, but in fairness to them, we train them twice a year on how good our product is. And their competitor trains them every day on how good the competitor's product is. And if we have a really clear, crisp, competitive advantage, it gives the salespeople confidence that they are selling a great product.
All right. I like that.
A surprising turn of events.
Steve leaning into sales. Did not think that would happen. And
it's Friday.
I'm going to go with the way too businessy answer. Competitive advantage is important because you can increase your margins and increase your growth rates.
Yes, that was an MBA answer. Well done.
So, all right, you can stay in business. You increase your perception and get you longevity. You keep playing the game. Boy, that recurring theme. It increases sales confidence, and with all of those things, it increases our profitability and our margins and the success of our business through growth. So obviously, whether we call it differentiation, competitive advantage, or just advantage, it's an important thing. And what a great conversation. Thank you so much. What a great panel, Cory Bryan, Brian Weber. I didn't do that on purpose, but it goes right in. I could just go Cory Bryan Weber and Marco Tillmann, Joy McCaffrey, and my partner, Steve Johnson. We do this every week. On Monday, we put a question in the community. On Wednesday, we do a poll. And on Fridays, we have these great conversations. Please be part of it. Join us. And we'll see you next week in the community. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.